Sonic Origins was released with mixed reactions due to its technical issues at launch and playable games. So when Sonic Origins Plus was announced as an enhanced version of the base package, I was excited to get the full classic Sonic experience. While the paid nature of this DLC may be unnecessary, adding a playable Amy into the 4 games, with playable Knuckles and Sonic CD, and the arrival of 12 Sonic Game Gear titles would at least make Sonic Origins a grander package as a whole. However, Sonic Origins Plus only partially succeeds in its effort, providing an experience reminiscent of the base game's launch. Before we get into the review, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for making this possible. Please take a second to check out patreon.com/noisypixel to support independent game journalism. The major boon of Sonic Origins Plus is the playable Amy in the 3 mainline titles and Sonic CD. Not only is simply having another character a justifiable excuse for playing through these games again, she also brings her own practical uniqueness to the table. To elaborate, Amy can use her trusty Pico Pico hammer to combat enemies while platforming, instilling different approaches to familiar areas and scenarios. This added ability seems minor in the grand scheme of things, and it is, but they're appreciated nonetheless, and Amy's sprites are lovingly crafted, so it's a plus in my book. As for Knuckles in Sonic CD, there isn't much to say since it goes just as you would expect. This was a neglected oversight from the original Origins that I'm at least glad to see fixed here. Now, the 4 classic characters are all playable across the 4 mainline titles as they should have been. On the other hand, the other significant additions of Sonic Origins Plus, the Game Gear titles, is disappointing. This gives players access to 12 Game Gear titles that are all playable now on modern consoles. If that's not enough, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Sonic Drift, and Sonic Drift 2 have dedicated 2-player options, which adds value to the package. At first glance, this all seems terrific, as one of the mainline critiques of the original Sonic Origins was the low number of playable titles when considering classic Sonic's massive library, and that's all directly addressed now. However, the performance of these games leave much to be desired. This may seem like an exaggeration, but some of these games felt borderline unplayable. Aside from the meager screen real estate, which may not be fixable given the platforms they were initially released on, their slowdown is severe. For instance, in Sonic 1 Game Gear, approaching collapsing bridges and waterfalls comes with dropped frames. Then in Sonic 2 Game Gear and Sonic Chaos, there seemed to be less rhyme or reason for the unacceptable slowdown, as it just happens at will. Regardless of whether the original releases of these games performed this poorly, steps should have been taken to optimize them in this collection. And if these shoddy showings are somehow exclusive to Sonic Origins Plus, then it's even less forgivable. Oddly enough, the games that have no platforming elements, such as Mean Bean Machine and Sonic Drift, perform smoothly. Sonic Blast was also surprisingly stable. It's all just so inconsistent. As for the content of the games themselves, they're pretty hit and miss. Many of them suffer from mediocre to downright forgettable level design, primarily due to the limited screen space. At best, they serve as neat novelties and not much else. In essence, I'm glad these games have made their way to Sonic Origins, if just to alleviate the entire package. Still, a few cases of intolerable performance makes them a massive misstep. Further, many of these additions don't have the staying power of the other classic entries, so whether or not you'll play them for longer than an hour depends on your history with each game. The audio quality in the Game Gear titles is also occasionally hard to listen to, so I recommend just lowering the volume. The final inclusions of Sonic Origins Plus are made up of the Premium Fun Pack, providing hard missions, letterbox background, bonus character animations in menu and music player, and additional remastered music tracks, along with the Classic Music Pack, which gives more remastered songs. It goes without saying that none of this should have been paid DLC. Everything here comes off as a feature that should have been available to the base game and not behind a paywall. A cute inclusion is the surprise menu on the mission select, housing a new illustration with new tiles unveiled depending on specific mission completion involving Amy and Knuckles in Sonic CD. As minor as it is, I found it to encourage a nice bit of replayability. Sonic Origins Plus had the opportunity to really deliver a collection of classic Sonic games that fans could experience on newer hardware. While Amy's playable inclusion is fantastic, the poor state of some Game Gear titles introduces too many points of frustration to overlook. Features like the classic music and premium fun pack should have been a free update. In fact, the amount of purchase bonuses and content locked behind DLC makes experiencing Sonic Origins Plus exhausting. So if you're desperately trying to complete this collection, then it's here, but you can just as easily skip this release. Noisy Pixel is giving Sonic Origins Plus a 6 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.